Hello. In this video, we'll be looking at how to add another visualization or screen to your CODESYS project and how to link screens together. So I am starting here from our project that we created in our first visualization creation video. So you can see here we have our gauge and our data bar that we had before. If you do not have a single visualization page or don't know how to get this far, please go see the first video created about adding a visualization to your project, as this video will extend that. So actually adding a second screen is very similar to adding the first. So what we're going to do is come here, right click application again, say add object, and again come down to visualization. So we already have added our visualization manager in the last video. It was automatically added for us when we added a visualization. So now we're just going to add a second visualization. So you'll notice, our first one's called visualization. Our second one by default is visualization _1. We can change this if we want to screen, 2, for instance. And if we really wanted to, we could say properties and name this screen 1. The only thing we'd have to make sure is just that our start visualization, then let's change that. Instead of just visualization, change it to screen 1. So we talked about start visualization in the previous video, but this tells CODESYS when it starts on the display what the start visualization, what the first screen is going to be that it shows in the project. So in this case, we're going to say it's screen 1. All right, so we're all set there. So now we've added a second screen. So just so when we see it, we can identify the difference. We can add a different gauge and come down to the toolbox and, for instance, add like a label or something. So we can say, screen 2, how about? So this will tell the difference here. So now that we've added a second screen, we can continue to do the same thing to add more screens if we wanted. We could, again, go add object visualization, add a third screen. In this case, we'll just stick with the 2 since this will show the basics. So on our first screen, I am going to add now a push button. And we can see that push button's added here. I'm just going to add some text to it. So go to page 2. Okay, and the intent of this push button is exactly that, just to move to the next page. Okay, so I'm going to click this push button, and we haven't really gotten into the properties of our widgets yet, but so I guess this video will serve as an introduction to widget properties. So in general, as we add widgets to our screens from the toolbox, once the widget is on the screen, each widget has specific properties. And these properties will be primarily how we interact with the widgets on the screen and set them up to be how we want them to look. So I won't, in these videos, I'm not gonna be able to go over the properties of every single widget, as there are a lot of them. So I'm just gonna talk about this in very general terms here. But we will go over some more specific things like linking this gauge to a variable or a CAN bus signal, which is done in the properties, but it's a specific property. But in this case, we're going to click on the push button, and you'll see here in the tabs, there's toolbox and there's properties. So right now we're looking at the properties of this specific element. So, you can see it's a element type button. We could change the name of it if we want. Right now it's just called GemL-Inst3. Not very descriptive, but so, there's a lot of properties here. We can add bitmaps to it, which we'll talk about in later videos. In this case, I am interested in some input configuration properties here. And you'll notice down here we have some different things. So on dialog close, on mouse click, on mouse down, on mouse enter. So mouse, the mouse is how CODESYS assumes you're interacting with the user interface, but your finger, assuming you're using our displays in a touch screen, your like a mouse click will be the same as you pressing your finger on the button. So on mouse down, so this event would happen once your finger presses the button. On mouse up would trigger when you lift your finger from the button, and a click is when you press down and lift it. So it's both events. So it's actually going to trigger when you lift your finger from the button, but you both need to press the button down and then lift it up. So we're going to use this one here in this case, but you could, for instance, again, use on mouse down, on mouse up, any of these events that you wanted, but we're going to use the click. So we're going to come over to the right and hit configure. The push buttons in CODESYS are a bit of a unique widget. So they have this event system and this input configuration that most other widgets don't have. So again, I'm not going to go over every option in here, but just in general, you can open a dialog. So a dialog is like a pop-up window. So if you're trying to show the user an error, you may open a dialog or close a dialog. For instance, if you have a pop-up window and a push button on that pop-up window that shows the error, you might want the push button to say close, and it would close the dialog. Change your language. We're going to use this one, so I won't talk about that. Execute command. I've never actually used that. Execute structured text code, write to a variable, toggle variable. So you have some different options. In this case, we're going to use change shown visualization. So I'm going to click this right arrow to bring it over to the right to say I want to do this. And a note, if I wanted to close a dialog, these happen in order. So for instance, if I did it this way, it would first change my shown visualization and then close the dialog. I could do it in a different order if I wanted, though, by first closing the dialog and then changing the visualization. In this case, though, we only wanted to do one thing, and that's change our visualization. So here we have, what visualization do we want it to go to? So we can just say previous or next. I tend not to use these because I think it goes in the order that you have it here, and I just don't like using it because it's not very specific. If you ever maybe were to change the order here, or remove a screen, then your previous and next is now linked to something else. So I always use the assign, and here we can click this ... and you'll see it brings up the visualizations that we have in our project currently. So screen 1 and screen 2. So right now we are on screen 1. This push button's on screen 1. So when we click it, we want it to go to page 2, or screen 2. So we're going to click screen 2 and hit OK, and hit OK again. And that's pretty much it. We can come to screen 2 now, and you'll notice we don't have anything here. So we can again do the same exact thing. Come to Common Controls, add a button, call this, go to screen 1. There we go. On mouse click, change shown visualization, assign screen 1. And that's it. So we now have a push button on both screens. So on screen 2, clicking this will go to screen 1, and on screen 1, clicking this one will go to screen 2. So we can, just like all of our videos, after we've added something, save build. And there we go. Visualization does not exist. So you'll notice it's complaining. So that's good that we did that. So right now it's complaining in web visualization, which we're not really using web visualization at this point, but we're still linked in our project. So if you remember, we changed the name of our initial visualization. So it was originally called visualization. We changed it to screen 1. Now it's saying this is still linked here. It's telling the web visu that the first visualization it should go to is one called visualization, but that no longer exists. So we need to also, and we went and did this in target visualization. We changed it to screen 1, but we also need to do it in web visualization. So we're going to do that, change it to screen 1, save, build, and now hopefully we should have success. So 0 errors, 0 warnings, everything's good. Also, as a note, before we end this video, there are multiple ways to create different screens. So in some customers, when they have a lot going on their different screens, they've noticed that switching pages with a push button and changing the visualization, as we've done in this video, can sometimes be a bit slow. So sometimes the page transitions in CODESYS from, say, as you move from screen 1 to screen 2 are a bit slower. So we'll also be looking at how to use frames in a future video. A frame is a control here, but we can use frames to achieve the same effect of switching screens, but not really switching screens. So it's a bit of a trick, but many customers have reported that doing it with frames is much faster than doing it how we've set up in this video. So I would recommend that, as you're starting out, you can do it this way, and just keep in mind that if your screen transitions are slow, certainly go watch the frame video, and maybe you just want to start out doing it with frames. So we have customers doing it both ways, but I figured I would mention that some customers have reported that using frames to switch screens is faster for them than doing it in this way. So I'll have a video about how to do this with frames as well. Okay, thanks for watching.